Okay, yes, we are recording. So, welcome to the Ultra Running Sam podcast. Is it Dan, or do you prefer Dan or Daniel Weller?
I honestly, I don't even know. I usually introduce myself as Daniel, but I think maybe more people call me Dan. I don't know. Either one is fine, whatever you prefer.
Well, I think as I've got older, I like started referring to myself as Samuel,
Yeah.
but everyone knows me as Sam and just calls me Sam. So, I
Yeah.
think Samuel used to be just reserved for my mum when she was telling me off.
Yeah,
So,
I think yeah, I just repeat what my parents told me. They always called me Daniel, so I feel like I should follow their lead. They made the choice, so
fair
yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
Awesome. Um, so you've got some impressive results under your belt for over the last year, and I spotted that you obviously had that great result recently at the Pennine Barrier 50 miler. You storm into a win there. But for people who aren't aware of who you are, I like to ask the superhero origin story. So, what is your if you were a superhero ultra runner,
Yeah.
what would be your origin story? How did you sort of how did you get into running? Was it something that started young? Was it later for you? And how did you get to the point where you're winning races?
Mhm. So I grew up in the US and was really into to soccer or football growing up. And yeah, played a lot, played like at a quite competitive level in the US at least, and took that quite seriously into my sort of early to mid teens, and then I kind of I don't know. I not exactly fell out of love, but I just wasn't putting the effort in my later teens. And sort of people, I think I grew up quite quickly, or I went through puberty quite quickly. So I all the kids that I was much bigger than as a young kid caught up to me, and they were just sort of running past me. Um, and yeah, so I started out playing soccer, sort of left that for a while, went to uni, didn't really do much exercise there. And then in my final year of university, I think my brother had just done a marathon, or maybe even yeah, I think he just completed a marathon, and I was sort of inspired to give it a go. So I started running a bit towards the end of my final year, and then yeah, I think I ran my first marathon in 2012, and then I did an ultra in 2013, and just sort of started working my way up the distances. The first few years, I think I would only do like one or maybe two races a year, and it wasn't like a huge focus. I was already pretty into ultra running news and that sort of thing, but I wasn't training loads or competing very much. And then yeah, I just sort of steadily got more and more into running and started doing longer distances. And I moved. So I left the US in 2012 permanently, and then I came to the UK in 2015. And I would say from there, I started, running quite a bit more because I was sort of settled in one place, and there are so many races around the UK to do. And yeah, I guess that's sort of my origin story. And yeah, over the last sort of 3, 4 years, I've done a lot of UK racing, I think. Not loads of international stuff, but um, yeah, maybe one a year on average outside of the UK as well.
Yeah, so you've had more of the sort of traditional sort of route into ultra running then, like you've done it gradually over years because that used to be the way, didn't it? It used to be that people would sort of take quite build up distances and over years, and then there seemed to be, I found this like interviewing people is there seemed to be like a bit of a fashion, not a fashion, I know, a bit of a trend of people
Mm.
literally like coming into the sport like within 2 or 3 years they're doing 100 milers and doing spine races and the Tour de Giants and stuff, and they seem to just like throw themselves into into the longer stuff. And
Yeah.
do you feel like have you benefited from that sort of longer approach coming into races? How have you sort of coped with the things that crop up if you get into a sport quickly, like injuries and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been lucky with well, maybe not just lucky, but I haven't had many injuries, and maybe that's part of the reason I've been pretty like just consistently able to just do a bit more each year. Um, I mean, I've had my niggles here and there, like calf problems and Achilles soreness and stuff, and I'm pretty much, I'd say I'm pretty much always sore, which maybe isn't a good thing, but I'm very rarely like injured to the point that I can't be running. Um, but yeah, I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing to jump straight into the long ultras if that's what you want to do. But you can learn you can learn so much from doing the shorter races, sub ultra, shorter ultras like 50K, even, 50 mile that you could apply to the 100-mile distance. And if you just jump straight in at 100 miles or more, I think maybe sometimes you don't get the chance to learn um, some of those skills, or maybe it takes a bit longer to learn them. Um, but but yeah, I mean, I guess so long as you can stay healthy, you should just do what you want to do, really. And um, I've just sort of gone for the races that I find interesting for the most part, and that where I think there might be good competition or a good route. That's sort of how I've picked things in the past.
Yeah, it's because you're based in Oxford, aren't you? Down there.
Yeah.
What is that through work? Is it that you're there? Is it?
Yeah, sort of. So yeah, I work here now. So I work for I'm in admissions at the university here. But it was sort of an accident that not entirely an accident that I ended up here, but an ex-girlfriend got a job here and I came with her. I was an English teacher at that point, and there's a lot of English language teaching. So an English language teacher. Um, there was a lot of teaching available here. There were a lot of opportunities, so I was able to get work quickly, just at different language schools around the city. And yeah, now I've just sort of settled here. I love the city. It's not the most exciting running right around Oxford, but you are pretty close by to good things. So I do like most of my longer runs out in the Chilterns, and that's only about 20-25 minutes drive away. And then it's like 2 hour, bit over 2 hours to get out to the Brecon Beacons if I want to do something a bit longer and with more climb. So like if I'm preparing for something bigger, then I might go out there a bit more. But yeah, I like Oxford, just not great for like hill running.
How did you find training for things like stuff on the Pennine Way? Then that is it just a case of like booking weekends and doing long weekends, or do you just making do with what you've got locally? Or
So I did recce before I did Challenger. I recce'd most of the route in just one 3-day period. I'd seen bits of it before, but I'm trying to remember where exactly. Over those 3 days, I went from Snake Pass to Horton and Ribblesdale because I kind of knew the first, whatever it is, 10 miles to Snake Pass. And then I figured it didn't look too complicated from Horton and Ribblesdale. So I thought if I get that done, I'll know where I'm going. Um, yeah, it probably would have been good to know how long that stretch from Horton and Ribblesdale to the finish is. And I don't think I could have known how long it was going to take me. But I think the recce was really helpful. I think in terms of preparing for that terrain, you can do that around here for the most part. Um, there aren't too many climbs or descents in Challenger that you really need to like get out to big mountains to practice. I don't think there are some longer climbs, but It's not like running around the Lake District or Snowdonia or something where you really want to get out and practice. I think the biggest thing for me, like running Challenger, was just getting used to carrying all that weight. That I tried to do a bit of that, but I think probably like most people who run those races for the first time, you probably, I would think most people look back and think maybe I should have done more running with weight before the race. That I definitely think I should have done that, but I did do a bit of that, but could have done more.
It's hard to get the balance, isn't it? I remember speaking to Damien Hall. I interviewed him before this last year's race, and was me trying to glean bits of information from people, and he was saying don't train, but this is coming from someone who's done it on multiple years, that to not train too much with a heavy pack, because you can sort of stitch yourself up a little bit with slowing yourself down like early on, rather than keeping your actual leg speed and actually having some pace and then introducing the weight, rather than thinking you've got to like trudge, like every week you've got to be doing all of your mileage with. But yeah, I know what you mean about being used to carrying
Yeah.
that weight.
To be fair, he would definitely know better than I would. But I think what you said, he said, does make sense. I think, like, yeah, you don't want to be training all year round just to prepare for the Spine series of races. And maybe I don't I may have listened to that interview. I can't remember exactly what was said, but like what was I going to say? Um, yeah, I think there are people who absolutely love the Spine race, and probably that is like the main focus of their year. And if that's the case, then maybe you would be tempted to just go and try and do specific stuff for Spine all year. But yeah, I would probably agree with Damien that, like, fitness wise, that's probably not a great idea, because you need to work on other aspects as well. But if you do a lot of ultra running anyway, then the yeah, the most novel thing about that race is carrying all that weight. If you're doing the full one, it's also 260 something miles, which is also a bit unusual. But yeah, like, what was different about the Challenger was from other 100 milers I've done, is just the weight, really. That was the big difference for me.
It's hard, isn't it, to sort of find a balance. And I know I sort of, because I was training for the full winter, and I brought a big pack, like the Montane Gecko 20+ liter,
Mhm.
and I found that because I was training with that I wanted to fill it up with stuff even when I wasn't, because if you didn't put anything in it, it would just like flapped around on your back
Yeah,
like having a parachute on.
yeah,
So I always found that I was going on training runs with friends, and we'd run to a pub or something, and they'd be like, "What have you got in that bag? What? It's only a 10-mile run. What have you got in there?" And I'm like, "Well, I've got a spare pair of waterproof trousers. I've got a spare pair of gloves. Do you want a coat? I've got a spare coat in there." Those
yeah,
guys, I think when you're doing, if you're preparing for a race like any of the Spine races, where kit is like the mandatory kit is quite mental at times. You
yeah.
kind of get into that mindset, don't you, of having loads of kit and thinking that you need loads of kit, and obviously that mandatory kit's there for a reason, but you can kind of ruin your own experience of running by carrying too much kit, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, um, granted, I did not. I think you have to use the kit way more on the full distance. But as I remember, I really only went into the back of my pack, um, maybe a couple of times in the race, like once at the checkpoints at halfway, but like, I had a waist belt, and I put most of my food in there, I think. Yeah, if I could go back, I would probably try and bring more food, or try and find a better variety of food. I think just trying to work out how to fuel for those long stretches between checkpoints. Um,
It's a
yeah,
long way, isn't it, from Hebden Head in hay.
So long, so long. It was the longest stretch of my entire life. Yeah. And it just seemed to get longer and longer as it was, it was
Derek,
almost like I wasn't getting closer to the finish. It was like it was getting further away as I was running forward.
the Cammer High Road, that section is just like unbelievable. Isn't it? You just think that you think that you're there, don't you? On there's a few occasions where you kind of like get into the brow of the hill, and you think, well, that I know that you get over the top of this hill, and then you drop down
Yeah,
the holes, but it just they're like, why am I going back up again? They shouldn't be going
yeah.
back up, they should be going down now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's like if you were fresh, it would be a really fun, like
Yeah.
runnable section
Mm,
with, some climbs. It's not like flat, so it's interesting. You've got
mm,
you've got climbs and undulation and stuff, and it was beautiful when I was doing it in the race because the sun was kind of coming up and it was really quiet and no one was out there, but I was just not able to enjoy it at that point. It was just kept on going. I don't know how long it took me, but it took a long time to get that bit done.
mm. What was your time in the end for that? How far ahead were you for the second place?
I can't actually remember my time. I think it was a bit under 25 hours. And I think I was just under 3 hours ahead of the second place finisher. It was maybe like 2 hours 45 or 2 hours 50 minutes
Mm.
ahead of second place. I didn't actually. I don't think I ran at all with second place during the race. I ran with a few other guys who I think the guy who finished in third. I ran with him for a bit at the beginning. Um, but yeah, pretty much from uh, I don't know, like 12 or 13 miles, I sort of ran on my own at the front. So yeah, it was a little bit lonely as well at times because that's just a dark, it can be a dark, lonely race, which I normally don't mind. But yeah, by the end, I was like happy to see people.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, you sort of like appear like you see the lights, don't you, of Hawes and everything, and you think finally there, and
Yeah,
then they make you like run down, and then you have to go kind of round the back of the way you think you'd like run down into if you know Hawes, you think that you'd run down the hill and go down the street, and it's there, isn't it? But it's not.
yeah,
You have to go round
yeah,
the back of everything and around the front. So
yeah.
final insult. So if you are you planning on doing any of the other spine races then?
Um, in future, definitely. I don't think next year it's on the cards for me. I think I would maybe like to go back the following year potentially. I I don't think full spine is for me yet. It just seems like too big a jump for me at the moment. I'd quite like to go back to Challenger
Mm.
because I really like that route. I'd like to just go back and give it another go, having done it once already, and knowing it a bit better now. But yeah, I mean, it definitely appeals to me down the line as well to maybe do the full one. But at the moment, I don't think I can wrap my head around that
Mm.
a distance like that.
Mm.
100 miles feels, or 108 miles feels sufficient for me at the moment.
And as well, it slows you down. I know that I've like spent like because I knew I was in for the winter just this winter just gone. I'd prepared for it by sort of doing some of the other races by doing like Challenger North and stuff last summer, and then I did the summer sprint the year before that in like preparation, and I just gradually got slower and slower over the last 18 months to the point
Yeah,
where, like after the spine in the last couple of months, I was thinking, well, will I ever like run the what I used to run? I know, I used to go and like a 20 miler on a Sunday morning, and I knew what my like top end pace was, and I was thinking, I'll never ever run that fast again. So I think it takes a lot out of you, and when you see like how Jack Scott has been since he, absolutely buried himself to win that race. I
Yeah,
don't think quite right. Still, he keeps talking about having to take more vitamin D and
yeah.
taking a different approach to things. So it's not to be taken lightly, is it? Like,
No,
put
God, no,
yourself.
yeah. I mean, just yeah, all you have to do is like look at a face of like a picture of his face at the finish. No, no offense to him. Like I'm sure he knows, it looks, yeah, he just looks like he went through.
Yeah,
I can't
hell.
even imagine what. I mean, how long did it take? How long did it take you to bounce back? Like, when were you? How long did it take you to start jogging
Um,
again after the race?
I think so. I was more battered from doing Challenge North last summer. That, like, it was 8 weeks before I was like running regularly again. But that was because my feet were destroyed and my knee, which I'd been suffering with a bad knee anyway, and it was just kind of, I trained enough to be able to do the race, but it kind of set me back with my knee. So I was kind of just very gingerly got back into training again last summer. But this year, so what are we now? We're May, aren't we? So yeah, I just started to just gradually ease myself back into running again within about 2 or 3 weeks of the race. Just going steady, not having any pressure on myself to try and get ready for anything. And then I'd started to think about, well, you know that you're starting to recover when you start thinking about races again. So I was
Yeah,
thinking, what I want to do. So I managed to get a place in the summer sprint. So that's going to be a race I'm going to do next month and try and get redemption um, for the experience that I had a couple of years ago where I was being sick for 15 miles of it to the end. So
yeah,
that's the plan for that. But then I did a race last weekend. So I did a 30 miler, and it was just supposed to be just like a build up race for moving on into June to doing but I felt all right. I felt I I trained for it, and all of the sort of key workouts that you do where if you do it and you go, right, I know that I'm ready now. That
yeah,
that that workout was good. I know I've hit that sort of pace. I never
yeah,
really I've never managed to get to any of the workouts where I thought I'm in absolutely tip top shape. I
yeah,
got to the point where I was like, I feel okay. I feel okay. I feel ready for this race, even though it's
yeah.
not. And yeah, and I managed to get second in it, so I was quite chuffed considering I
Nice.
didn't really have any like real intentions of trying to win it, but got on the start line and everyone set off, and Jess, who won it, Jess Ross, a bit of a shout out to Jess Ross. I know she does listen. She told me she listens to the podcast. So she absolutely flew off the front, and I was like, I don't feel like I didn't really feel like I was here to race anybody. I just wanted to just see how I was. Um,
Yeah.
she set off at such a pace, and nobody else was chasing her. And I thought, well, I'll just see if I can stay with her for a bit. And I managed to stay with her up until we got up onto Stanage Edge, and we were going across Stanage Edge, and the stomach bug that I'd had earlier in the week that I thought was gone suddenly came back with a vengeance, and I dive behind a big rock, and had to do that a
Not
couple
pretty.
of
Yeah.
times. So it wasn't. I mean, my fueling was apart from that. Like I'd got dialed my fueling in, and so I was pleased with how I was taking gels and stuff. Because I got that's another thing is that I've got so used to not having gels anymore because all the spine work that I'd done just I'd never ever used gels because the pace was so slow that I was just eating like real food all the time. So going back to like having gels in a race was kind of like a bit of a novelty again. Sort of, it felt like teaching your body again how to take on gels and not feel sick. And but anyway, yeah, that was a success. Yeah, I was quite
Yeah.
happy with that. So.
Yeah. If you can be sick and still finish second,
Oh
I
no, it
think you've
wasn't
done
sick.
well.
It was the other end.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
Three unexpected pit stops, shall we say?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
see. I see. Okay.
yeah. And
Well, you've still done well. So
yeah, rumbling stomach and rumbling gut. So yeah, I was happy with second.
yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about you. So
I, I was just going to say as well. It's funny you said that you were more beat up after that Challenger North in the summer. Was that a really hot year for Challenger North as well? Because it was
yeah,
hot for
it's
and
yeah, humid.
yeah,
Yeah, it was really, really hot in the lead up to it. Like those few weeks leading up to it were like baking hot, really
yeah,
like 30-degree days and stuff. And then on the day, just as we're about to set off from it's not Hawes, it's like just up from Hawes, it's like at the base of Great Shunner Fell, just
yeah.
there. Literally like 10 minutes before the race started, the heavens opened up and thunder and lightning. So we like got all our wet weather gear off, and we're all hiking up, like power hiking up to the top of Great Shunner Fell. And in the distance, you can see like on the peak, you could see like lightning striking at the top.
Oh, yeah,
We're all hiking away with metal poles all the way up to the top of that. But by the time we got up there, it like passed over. But it was just absolute like torrential rain for the first sort of 7 or 8 hours, something like that. And then so I changed my socks and dried my feet out at Middleton. But by that point, I was starting. So only like sort of like 40 miles in, I was starting to feel like blisters forming, and there was like nothing I could do. No, I tried sort of patching them up and putting, all the stuff I got with me, like tape and everything, like taping stuff up. But it was like a fighting a losing battle, because I suppose once you get a blister, there's kind of no return from it, is there? It's a blister and it's going to get bigger and bigger. You can slow it down, but you're not. It's never going to go back to good. So yeah, by the end, I was in like absolutely excruciating. But I've never been in so much pain with my feet before, and I've never experienced that with races because years and years of doing ultras, you kind of you think blisters are like the thing that you sort of deal with when you first start running. Like you get the old like you get blisters, you get shin splints, and then you work through it, and then your body's like, oh, okay, I understand how things are now, and you don't get blisters and you don't get those things because your body gets used to it. So it was like going back to the beginning again of like ultra running and getting blisters. So
yeah.
but that seemed to be a theme for everyone. So they were saying it was like the perfect storm. So the humidity plus the rain
Mm.
just made your feet like sweat and swell. So I was like, I was really, I was a bit worried about the winter race, and I'm thinking, well, 160 miles and my feet were destroyed. What happens if that happens again, and I've got to do another 100 miles on top of that? But
Yeah.
a few people had sort of said in winter you don't. I mean, you must know this yourself. Like your feet don't swell as much as they do is in the summer, and it was true. I did get a few sort of spot hot areas and blisters that I sort of dealt with, but they never really like turned into anything like they did on the summer race. Don't know how do you fare with your feet?
I think I'm pretty lucky with them, to be honest. I mean, I've obviously had blisters before, but it's never been like a key factor in a race. I wouldn't say like I often get them in races, and my toenails get destroyed, but my feet are usually okay. It's usually something muscular that might come up and cause me issues in a race. And when you mentioned Challenger North, I always find that in warmer races, I take a lot longer to bounce back. So if I get a bit dehydrated or I just find that I'm really really sore for the next few weeks. Whereas with like Challenger South this winter, took me a long time to bounce back mentally from that race. I felt pretty drained by it, but physically I felt pretty good fairly quickly, fairly soon afterwards. So yeah, I think the summer races are harder in some ways on your body. At least I find that.
Mm. Yeah, which
But
is the opposite of what people think of the spine, isn't it? They think that if you do any of the summer races, that's the easy option.
yeah, I mean, granted, I don't know if that's the case if you do the full 260 whatever miles, 268, is it?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but yeah, I certainly find I prefer winter races, um, personally.
Mm. Yeah, it swings and roundabouts into there's benefits of both, isn't there? Yeah.
Mm.
Saying this to John Shields, I was speaking to last, and he was saying how he really wants to do the summer spine because he wants to see the route. So you
Mm.
all that amount of daylight that you get in the summer, which is true. Like
Yeah,
in with a winter race, you just feel like you're in darkness all the time. It just feels like you just constantly got your head torch on. But
yeah,
in the summer, I was saying to him how I was on the phone at like 10 o'clock at night talking to the family, and I still hadn't got my head torch on, like just plodding along, and the sun was obviously going down, but I could still see everything.
yeah.
So you kind of, yeah, there's pros and cons in there for summer races and for winter races.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it is. It's also maybe personal, but yeah, John he'll have collected most of the races at this point now. He'll have done what? Winter, sprint, summer challenger,
So yeah, he wants to
ultra,
do the full.
northern.
He's doing the full summer this year,
Yeah,
and then I expected him to go and do like the full winter,
yeah,
but not. He's going to go and do the Arctic spine in
okay,
that February, is it? It's like
yes, yeah.
looks a
Well,
bit looked wild when that happened this year.
yeah, that's beyond me. So yeah, good
I
luck
was
to him.
watching the trackers for that, and I was kept looking at it and thinking they're not gone anywhere. Where like at this rate, it's going to take them 2 weeks to do the course. It's,
Yeah,
it's another
yeah.
thing altogether, isn't it? That
It
yeah.
is, yeah. I don't think I even have the skills to approach that at the moment, but yeah,
Never
it's
say
cool to
never.
follow. It's cool to follow along anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Um, so this win that you just had, then the Pennine Barrier. So for people that sort of don't know the race, where is it, and what's the route and everything?
Mhm. So it starts in Malum, and then you follow the Pennine Way. So you follow actually the route that you would take in Spine. So you go through, well, you go up Fountains Fell, then down Fountains Fell, up Penny Ghent, and then you do most of the same descent of Penny Ghent, and then you come off to the right as opposed to going into Horton and Ribblesdale. And then you do the Yorkshire Three Peaks. So you've already done one, and then you do Whernside and Ingleborough, come back up the side of Penny Ghent, back over Fountains Fell, and then back to Malham. And there's a short sort of out and back that you do on the road, yeah, early in the race, just to make sure that it's 50 miles.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, when I recce'd that bit of the routes for Challenger, I just had an amazing time. It was like snowy, and I just loved going up Penny Ghent, and there was like a cloud inversion up there, and I just thought, wow, I'd like to do more running out here. And yeah, I found I had heard of the Pennine Barrier before, but I hadn't really looked into it that much. Um, and yeah, I knew I didn't want to go back to Ultra Trail Snowdonia. I'd done that the 2 previous years, and I wanted a break from that. And so yeah, I signed up for Pennine Barrier, and yeah, it's such a cool route. Like from that's the kind of running I really like to do. So it's got a few technical bits, but a lot of it is really runnable. And it's got climb, but not crazy amounts of climb. I quite like 50 miles as a distance. It's you don't lose too much sleep over it. Like, you have to wake up early in the morning for the race, but you
Done
can
in a
get it
day.
done in a day. Exactly. Um, and yeah, they were just, yeah, I just was really excited about it, felt really good going in, and then just had a really good day at the race as well.
Mm. So that the route then. So when you
Yeah.
say you go through Malham, do you go up and go over the rocks? Do you go? Yeah,
Yes.
do you
Yeah,
go
so
that way?
you literally follow the Pennine Way from Malham,
Mm.
um, almost all the way down to the bottom of Penny Ghent, um, with just before you get to Malham Tarn, you do an out and back on the road. So that's the
Right.
only sort of difference. But everything else is the exact same as the Pennine Way. So you'd be familiar with all of that.
Yeah, yeah, I just said how it was felt like you're in the dark all the time. That was actually the section I went through in daylight, and it was really,
Yeah,
really nice. It was
yeah,
good. It was good to see, where you're putting your foot when you go over those rocks at Malham.
yeah. Oh God, yeah. Well, yeah, it's marshaled in the Pennine Barrier. So and again, I was doing it in the day, so it's sort of easier to pick your way around there. But I was worried about that for Challenger because I didn't really like if you look on Strava, the heat maps, it's sort of people go all over the place. Like some people stay very far left, and then some
Yeah.
people sort of go more sort of straight across the rocks, which is what I tried to do in my recce. And I just thought this is not going to be a good idea when I'm tired and in the dark.
Mm,
So yeah, but in the race you can kind of pick your way through a nice little grassy bit, and it wasn't too tricky, I wouldn't say.
mm.
Um,
Not too bad. I know when I I was a bit miffed actually when on the spine when I went through there because I was feeling quite good at that point because the sun was out. I was feeling like I'd walked a lot of the night before just to save a bit of energy. And I was like overtaking loads of people through that section. I overtook these two guys going down to Malham Cove, and they were behind me, and I like sort of weaved my way up. So like spoke to Adam Jacobs, the photographer, had a chat with him, and then sort of cut my way across the rocks, and then got up. So you go up that narrow valley, then don't you?
yeah,
Like jump up through that bit, and we got to there, and these two lads just suddenly appeared ahead of me from the left. I'm like, where did you come from?
so they skipped the whole valley basically.
They'd gone. I think what they'd done instead of going onto the path that goes down to Malham Cove and then goes up the rocks and across the rocks, they'd stayed on the road and gone up the road and then
Oh,
gone around the back of the rocks and got back on the Pennine Way. So I was a bit annoyed. I was,
yeah, that
right.
is quite a bit easier because that is some of I mean, it's only a short section, but it is pretty
Yeah, you
like
know
rough
about
on
it.
the foot through there, isn't it?
Yeah, so I was so like annoyed with it. I sped up and left them behind again, and I overtook a few other people. Got to the next like mini checkpoint, and I was like, right, there's these two guys, and they've cut the course.
Yeah.
I was quite bitter about it, and afterwards I was like, probably shouldn't have said that. I was probably not. They probably like did it by accident or felt bad about doing it. So if they'd gained anything, what difference would it have made on that race? Because it's so ridiculous. You don't end up making the Oscars. Well, anyway, so
Yeah. Yeah.
what was your sort of training for that race then? Did you come up and did you rely on your knowledge that you'd got of the route from doing Challenger South, or did you come up and do some specific stuff on it for Pennine Barrier?
Yeah, no, I didn't recce specifically for Pennine Barrier. Just I would have liked to, but it is quite a long trek for me to get up there. I had done Felsman back in 2019 or 2018. I think it was 2019, and that takes in um, some of those some of that terrain, but like in a different yeah. There's not a whole lot of overlap, but I think I'd been to the top of one side. My knowledge of the Felsman course is not great, but yeah, so I knew the area a little bit. And in terms of training, after Challenger, I took like I didn't take time fully off, but I definitely like scaled back the training a lot. Just took some time to recover. Did a bit of like flatter speed stuff, just because I don't often do that. And and then yes, slowly started ramping stuff back up and did a few bigger weeks right before the race. I did a bit more on the bike than I normally would, which I think was helpful. Just sort of one of my biggest issues, I get like sore ankles and Achilles, and I find that going on the bike just helps alleviate that a little bit, like take the pounding away. Because yeah, sometimes I wake up in the morning and I just like hobble down the stairs and I wonder how I'm going to get out the door for a run. And yeah, I think mixing in a bit more bike has helped that. I'm still sore, but not as sore. Doing a bit more cross training. So yeah, I mean that was sort of the training that led up to it. And
What sort of sorry to interrupt. What sort of mileage are you putting in for that and in the build up?
I mean, so far this year I haven't done like uh super big mileage. I think I did like the biggest was like an 80 or a 90-mile week before that race. But I did a lot more going into Challenger. For example, I did a couple of 100 and maybe 110-mile weeks or something. I may be misremembering. I think I did 210-mile weeks, and that had you know, like the recce that I did, which was like 90 miles in 3 days. So that's going to be a big week.
Mm.
But yeah, this in the run up to Pennine Barrier, I was kind of going a bit more by hours as well, because I was doing some long rides on the bike at the weekend. I just bought my mate's gravel bike off of him, so I was sort of exploring on that. So I did like, I don't know, a big week of like 16 or 17 hours a couple of weeks out. But you know, half of it was running and half of it was on a bike. But yeah, I mean, I think I probably put in a lot more running by this time last year than this year. But I'm okay with that. I'll ramp up the running a bit more now and try and keep the biking in from time to time as well.
Mm. Do you do any like any strength work, gym work?
No, I should, but I don't. I sometimes get in the habit of just doing a couple really quick sessions at home every week, but then I sort of fall out of the habit as well. So I'm pretty bad about that. I would like to do more. But yeah, sometimes if things are busy, generally it falls by the wayside.
Hard to find a time into to do something. You sort of almost have to like sacrifice a bit of running to be able to do
Yeah,
it.
yeah, and it's just yeah, finding the motivation sometimes as well. Like I'm always excited to go out for a run. I'm well, usually excited to go out for a run. I'm almost always not excited to do strength work. So I know it's something I should do more of, but yeah, don't
Mm.
always do it.
I was thinking when you were saying about you having issues with your ankles and your Achilles and stuff, that there was when I had my issues with my knee, sort of the last been going on for like the last 2 years. The one thing that sort of helped me was like specific strength work and doing the guy on YouTube. You may or not have heard of the knees over toes guy.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I've seen
All
a
the
bit of
weird
his stuff. Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, all the weird exercises that he does, and I found that that's more specifically for knees, but
Mm.
doing like weighted dips on a box, so like the calf like soleus dips, and they're really good for your ankles and your calves and everything. And then doing, you look like an absolute idiot in the gym, but I can see everybody looking at me, and I just kind of ignore it. But going and sitting on a weights bench with one leg off and one leg on, sort of like across the top of it, with your foot hanging off the end, and hooking a kettlebell over your foot. You have to make sure you've got the right shoes on, because some of them don't. Like I've got some barefoot shoes, and they go over barefoot shoes really well. It's supposed to depend on how big your feet are. And just doing like tibialis raises. So it's like lifting your foot, lifting the kettlebell, like hinging on your ankle and doing that and strength your tibialis. That you probably, I know you didn't come on the podcast to get advice and
No,
strategy,
no. I
but
mean, I think when I do, I haven't done that exact exercise, but I'm definitely familiar with looking a bit silly in the gym in front of a bunch of people who lift weights regularly. But yeah, no, whenever I do strength work, especially on like the calves, I do notice an improvement in the ankles. So I probably should get on that more. I also find for me, it can help just to stand on one of those sort of balance board type things in so I mean I use it a bit just to actually balance on, but sometimes I just rest it on the back, like rest my weight on the back and then have my calves sort of stretched out and just
Mm.
stand on there and watch TV for a bit.
That's a good idea.
And that seems to help as well. And just like sort of I don't know, maybe it's just in my mind, but like massaging my calves as well can mean that I wake up feeling a little bit less sore in the ankles. But but yeah. Um
So
but
much to it. So much to so much
yeah,
to do. Not
yeah,
enough. So much
yeah.
to.
Yeah. Um
What's your plans for the rest of the season then? Have you got it sort of mapped out, or is it fluid, or
yeah, so I've got at least through July. So the big sort of goal is Lakeland 100. Um, so yeah, I've taken a week pretty much off after Pennine Barrier, and now I'm gonna sort of start building towards that. I'm doing the first 50K of Race the Stones as well. So that's just a couple weeks out from Lakeland. So that'll be a kind of like a tester before Lakeland. That can be. It seems to always be really hot that weekend. And I know Lakeland can be quite hot too, and that's sort of my kryptonite. So I'm going to try and prepare for the heat as best I can. If it's a really hot day at Lakeland, I'm just going to have to like be sensible because um, pushing in the heat is the quickest way from me to just fall apart. So I need to be smart if that's the case. But I do want to try and go in and actually prepare for that a bit and be ready for it.
the heat? I was saying this to a mate of mine who did UTS a couple of years ago. Now it seems to be that that weekend for that race always seems to be red hot, doesn't it? It's like
God,
you.
yeah, I really felt for everyone this past weekend, and I felt for them, and I also felt really lucky that I had made the decision not to do it this year because it would have been a disaster. Because I did it the previous year and I dropped from the 100K because I just found it ridiculously hot, and I think they had it. I mean, I don't know about significantly hotter, but I think it was hotter this year than last year even.
Okay.
Um, and it always seems to just be like the first weekend of real heat, because it was definitely the case last year that we hadn't really had anything above like 15 or 16 degrees. And then all of a sudden it was like 21 bright sunshine, no wind. And it seems like it was more or less the same this weekend and maybe even a bit hotter. Um,
Yeah, definitely hotter this weekend. I'm sure it was like, well, round where we were, it was like 20, 22, 23, something like that.
yeah, yeah.
Minimum. Yeah, so yeah, there's no hiding, is there, when you're on the side of a mountain and the heat's coming down on you.
No, yeah, especially yeah, if you're on the wrong side of the mountain with no breeze and yeah, the sun is just baking you alive. That is a and that race is just so difficult in so many ways that yeah, if the weather is not on your side, then it makes it almost impossible. But then again, and people went out and broke course records this past
Mm.
weekend as well. So some people can do it. But yeah,
Do you
that's
think it's
a
like a bit of a like a genetic thing, the whole heat? Because there's lots of information in there on like people doing heat training and everything like that. Do you think just some people are just naturally gifted in that department?
uh I think they're probably I couldn't say for sure. I don't have enough background to say, but I would guess that there is some genetic component, and I would also think that just like your build as a runner potentially has some effect. So if you're like maybe a bulkier runner, it's harder to disperse the heat. Um,
Mm.
if you're like lighter, it's probably easier to get rid of that. But then, probably, well, it is definitely harder to stay warm in cold races as well. Um, so yeah, again, as you said before, it sort of swings and roundabouts. But yeah, I think being a ginger myself as well, that doesn't help. I just like burn instantly in any kind of sunshine. So yeah, that's another element that I have to worry about. But yeah, it's nice in the UK that there are some really big winter races, and those I often feel like have to be the focus for me because I just have not been able to figure out the heat. I'm hoping that I'm gonna get closer to that, to figuring that piece of the puzzle out. But yeah, most of the big races internationally are in the summer, aren't they? So it is something you have to figure out eventually.
So what about sort of looking forward to next winter then? Is there something that you got your eye on for a winter focus?
Yeah, so I've recently signed up for the Arc 50 mile. So I've done the 100 mile. I did that in 20.
So you got third.
Yes, yeah. 2 years ago. Can't even remember. Was it 2022, I think? Um, no, 2023, the beginning of 2023. So yeah, I'd like to go have a go at that 50. Be a bit
Is that
different.
new? Is that new because of it being taken over by UTMB, or was it?
So it's not a new distance. The distance has been there. Well, I don't know how long they've been doing the 50, if they've done it since the start, but it's been there for a while, definitely. But it will be different in the sense that there will be more checkpoints, and I haven't looked. I should have looked more carefully at the rules, but I assume that there's no crewing allowed, whereas you used to be allowed some crew for it. So it will be different. Um, but yeah, they've done the distance for a while.
So you've done that race before then. So what's your? I know it can be a bit of a controversial subject. What's your
Yeah.
opinion on the whole UTMB master plan to take over the world? And I say that with tongue in cheek because
Uh,
I'm going to UTMB this year to do one of their media races. So
yeah. Yeah. And I was, um, to be honest, I find it hard to have like really strong opinions about these things. I was definitely a bit disappointed in the way that UTMB dealt with things over the past 12 months. There were definitely things that um, I just thought they didn't handle well. At the same time, you know, I've always wanted to go to UTMB. I've always been like just under qualifying for one of their races as an elite. So I've always like had that as a goal in the back of my mind. But like at one point you needed to get top three, and I came fourth. At one point you needed like an back when it was an ITRA index, you needed like a 750, and I was at like 749 or something. So I've always been just outside of that. So I've never actually gone to one of the races. I've been there because my brother actually was supposed to race back in like 2013, maybe 2014. But he got injured and couldn't run. But we were out there and we watched it. And yeah, it's a cool event, isn't it? So, but at the same time, you don't want them taking over. So for me, for a while I was like obsessed with UTMB, and I really only wanted to do races that had like UTMB points and indexes and stuff. Now I think I take more of the approach of like, well, I want to do local races that interest me and support that. And also, quite frankly, like I feel like I can maybe be more competitive in that type of race. Whereas, if I go to UTMB, like best case scenario, maybe finish in the top 50 or something. So Yeah, I think going back to how I feel about the whole arc thing, you know, I love that race. I think the people who run it are great. I understand that some people aren't happy that they've chosen to pair with UTMB, but and if that's how you feel, then fair enough. Don't run the race. But personally, I would at some point like to do UTMB. I would like to or one of the UTMB races. I like the arc route. I think it's really cool route. Again, it's a winter race that suits me. Um, so yeah, for me, it just seemed like a good race to do. And around that time of year, unless you're going to do spine, there's not a lot going on in January. Um, so it's kind of one of those two races if you want to do something in the
Yeah.
UK that's big and competitive. So,
Although there's the Winter Downs, isn't there now? The 200.
well, yes, good point.
And
And they've added the 100-mile distance as well. I that's in is that sort of December still?
it's like I think it's like the week before you break up for the end of the year festivities.
Yes. I crewed my mate James White for that race this past year. Um and yeah, that's a cool option as well. And I do like I like bits of that route. Um some of it this past year was a bit of a mud bath. And I'm not sure like that particular bit I would want. And 200 miles is not for me. Would need to check what the 100-mile route is. I haven't looked at that, but I mean I do love Centurion events as well. I've done quite a few of them. So yeah, you're right. There is that as well, and there are a few other things in winter that are cool. I really enjoyed the Cheviot Goat. I did that a couple of years ago. Um, but
Did,
yeah.
did what you was that third? Did you get third? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, third in that as well. So yeah. Um, but I totally understand that some people are not happy about the whole UTMB in general, and I get that. I'm also not happy about everything, but yeah, it's hard to make yeah perfect choices.
Yeah, I've kind of my opinion's kind of like sort of gone backwards and forwards on it, and I do feel sorry for people that feel like races have sort of been put to one side or taken over, and but I think ultimately, like if you want the sport to grow, money has to come into the sport, and you can choose whether to do those races or not. The two things that can exist side by side. It's like someone was talking to someone about this recently, and they sort of explained it like you've got professional football, you've got the Premier League, and then you've got whichever one. It's a spectacle. It's expensive. You know what you're getting. You pay your money to get that experience, or you can go and see your local team playing on a Saturday, and get in really cheap and have a couple of beers and have a laugh. And that's like you've got the choice to do either of those things. So and money trickles down hopefully through and if you think that there could be in the future like professional runners, the trail runners that get to earn an actual living out of it, like a Premier League football player like gets earns a good wedge, then it can only be a good thing. But I think while it's still in that sort of process of progression, people are going to have strong opinions on it. But I try and stay neutral.
Yeah. Yeah, same.
Yeah. Awesome.
But
So what's your sort of blue sky? What race would you love to do and do well at that that you've not done yet? That sort of sky's the limit anywhere in the world kind of thing.
well, I mean, for now, it's Lakeland, I think. I haven't done that race, and that seems like, kind of a premier event in the UK. And I haven't really seen much of the route yet. I am planning to go recce it, but yeah, that's probably the one for now. in terms of like internationally, what would I really like to do? I'd like to go back to the States, and because I have done almost no racing in the States. I did I signed up for 100 miler. Well, I ran 100 miler in Bryce Canyon back in like 2014, but I dropped it mile 84. Um, so I don't think I've ever completed an ultra in the US. So there are a few that I would maybe consider doing there. Um, I'd quite like to do a race in Colorado. Not there's one called High Lonesome that I'm kind of interested in doing sometime. Um, Maybe something like I'm trying to remember what it's called. There's one in Minnesota, which is I grew up in Iowa, so the state above me is Minnesota, and they've got a pretty famous 100 mile race there that I can't. The Superior 100 mile is what it's
Yes,
called.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would think that it would probably be something I could prepare for pretty well here because it's kind of, I think it's like sort of woody and rooty with not huge climbs, but like a lot of up and down. So probably not too dissimilar to what you can get in the Chilterns. Um, but yeah, I think those are maybe the races that immediately like jump to my mind when I think of that sort of thing. But yeah, I think also just exploring more races around the UK and you know, Pennine Barrier was like a great example of that. I'd heard of that race, but had never really looked into it. And then I went and I was like, oh, this is an amazing event. I definitely it was my first GB Ultras event, but they put on really good, yeah, they have like a good community there, um, good checkpoints, really friendly people. It felt a little bit to me like a sort of um, it felt similar to the sort of Centurion community, I thought, which is maybe more prevalent down south where I'm doing a lot of my running. But it felt like a sort of similar community of people and like friendly people. Um, so yeah, I was really impressed with that.
So you'd recommend that to anyone?
Definitely, definitely. Yeah. Um, what about you? What are your
Mm.
race, your like
Yeah.
bucket list races?
So all I've got in stone is in next month the spine sprint doing that.
Mhm.
And then I'm going to UTMB in August to do MCC, which is one that I'd never heard of, and it's the first race in the week, and they put it on for so it's like locals and people associated with the race do it. So you've got to have some connection with the race, or you've got to live locally. So they offered me a place in that after I interviewed the guys from Ironman and UTMB about the stuff that went cracked off in Canada. And I think
Yeah,
they sort of like, they were appreciative of somebody actually hearing them out, and they were like,
yeah,
thanks for the interview. Do you fancy
yeah,
coming to UTMB? And I'm like, yeah, obviously, yeah, that'd be great.
yeah.
So I'm heading out there in August with the family, trying to figure out how we're going to do it. Yeah, whether we're going to go in a camper or whether we're going to tent or whether we're going to try and find an Airbnb. It's all really expensive though, but we'll see. Or I might just end up going on my own.
Yeah, yeah. I had heard about that one before. And for a second, I thought you were talking about is it PTL, the
Oh,
insanely
that's the
long
big one,
one?
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I thought that might. But how long is
It's 25 miles. So
okay.
it's the last 25 miles from I can't remember the is it I don't know how you pronounce it, Martingey Coombe or something like that. And it's basically the last 25 miles, and you from the start, you start at the base of a climb and you do like 7 kilometers of climbing, and then you drop down and then go up again and then come right down into Chamonix. So they
Yeah,
reckon they reckon it's, well, I mean, all of that is going to be scenic anyway.
yeah,
After I've done the sprint in June, I'll then sort of switch to trying to do some really hilly stuff. And because although I live on the edge of the Peak District, sort of only like 15 minutes, and I'm in like Ashbourne and stuff, and can get into the peaks. I still, the majority of my training, like daily miles, are just around where I live, and there's not a massive amount of elevation around here, so I have to be quite specific and go and do like do some climbs and do hill repeats on Thorpe Cloud at Dovedale.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Get my,
Dovedale's nice though. Yeah, I've done a bit of running around there.
yeah, it's a bit touristy. But if you go early enough in the morning, you don't really see anyone. So it's quite nice. There's some nice like there's a couple of nice like single track routes that nobody really goes on because they're basically like sheep trods that go up, like sort of traverse along the ridges. And you don't really, I've never seen anybody up there. So that's
Yeah.
you can get some quite technical like climbing in there if you're willing to like repeat stuff over and over again. So you just got to make do with what you got, don't you?
Yeah, yeah. I remember just sort of using Strava to plot out a route around there. And I think I don't know, there were maybe 3 or 4 sections that where I just ran through just like a sea of nettles. I was completely like covered in stings by the end of the run. So yeah, if you don't have the local knowledge, you've got to yeah, yeah, be careful of the nettles around there.
But I suppose so. Other than that, I haven't really got anything booked in for the end of the year. I might do. There's a race I really like in the Peak District that's put on by Ranger Ultras in November, and they do the peaks south and north. So the route's changed now, but it used to be basically over 2 days you do the full length of the Peak District from so the first day you did from Ashbourne into Edale. And then on the second day they ship you up to Marsden, Kirklees, and you run back to Edale that way. So over the 2 days you cover the full length, like 60 odd miles or something like that. So it's like 50k the first day and then like just over a marathon the second day. That's nice. And if you're training for for one of the spine races, it's quite good because you're on a lot of the route anyway, especially on the second day. There's a lot of that route, and it's bad, and it's normally bad weather in November. So I might do that in November. But then January, I'm back on the media team for the spine, so I'll be driving around in the van, chasing people and filming people in January, and not suffering the torture of doing the race.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I'm sure that you'll be suffering even just doing media work. I'm sure it's not easy.
Yeah, no, it's a tiring week, but it's obviously nowhere near as tiring as doing the race. You actually get quite good preferential treatment actually if you media. You go into the checkpoints and they sort of rally around you a little bit, probably the same as when you get into a checkpoint when you're doing the race and they sit you down and they give you what do you want and stuff like that.
Right.
Whereas you don't get that level of treatment on media, but you recognise as being part of the race, and they will sort of do whatever they can to help you. So they're like somewhere to sleep. There's a free room here. You can go and take a bed there, etc. So sometimes you sleep, but some of the checkpoints, like the one at Hebden Bridge, I'd only ever been there for the finish of the sprint. And I didn't realise that hostel there is beautiful, really nice. The rooms are really, really nice, and they've got really good facilities. I
Yeah.
remember staying the first night of the race on media last year, and I'm thinking, oh, it'd be nice if they're all like this, but I know that they're not further up.
Yeah.
Anyway, I appreciate you coming on, and it's good getting to know you, and I'm looking forward to sort of seeing how you're going to do in future races, and I'm sure you've got some more big wins on the horizon. So wish you all the best for your future endeavours.
Well, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm always happy to chat about running. So yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Thanks for calling. Is anyone that you want to sort of give a shout out to? Are you supported by anyone? Do you get any? Have you got
Yeah,
any?
so it's kind of all a bit new to me, but yeah, so I mean Varga, I've just started getting some support from Phoenix. So uh,
Yes, John Shield.
it's yes,
Mm.
exactly. He's our sort of team captain, I guess. And then Voom as well, Voom Nutrition. So yes, I need to get more accustomed to plugging that. But yeah, it's all kind of
You're
new
not
to
very
me.
active. You're not very like active on social. Not very active on Instagram, at least, are you? Sort of.
I'm trying to get better at that as well. So yeah, trying to figure all of that out. I mean, I've been on there for a while. It's just, yeah, I need to find ways to post a bit more.
Yeah. Plugging all those sponsors.
Exactly. But yeah,
Awesome. Cheers, mate. Thanks for coming on.
cool. Yeah, thank you, Sam.
No worries. Cheers. Bye,
Yeah,
everyone.
see you. Bye.
Bye, bye, bye.